A crowd of people with torches stands in the square, all shouting for the witch to be burned and claiming that it is because of her that all the barns have burned down. The people are furious and don't know how to survive. Only one girl disagrees with them. She screams for Circinia to be untied, for she has done nothing wrong. The lady with the red hair has accepted her fate. It is a tale of a commonplace girl who happens to be the bride of an heir. One day, the protagonist woke up in the body of Circinia, the villain of the story. Circinia was a sorceress of the Belfar Empire. She controlled the power of fire. Using her skills, the villainess could easily gather and emit heat, making her completely invincible. No one in the empire could defeat her. In addition to all the atrocities she committed, the girl also disfigured the protagonist's mother, burned down half the empire, and tried to steal and finish off the heir. However, the prince managed to thwart her nefarious plans and survive, which for Circinia meant a death sentence. Unable to resist her vicious nature, she came to a terrible end. Her body was pierced with 15 arrows and then plunged into eternal sleep in front of the crowd. Her death was an attempt to show the power of the heir. At the end of the story, everyone but Circinia finds their happiness. At first, the girl was frightened when she learned that she had become a villain. She realized that she was destined for Circinia's fate. But, for good or bad, the protagonist took possession of her body 3 years before the story begins. It turns out, the girl can change her fate, because if you lay low and stop the atrocities, there is a chance to save your head. That was her first thought. But now she is in the midst of a crowd of people who want to burn her, but the fire is not afraid of the girl. When they light the fire, what does she think? But that it will be necessary to add a little oil and then she will be able to escape without much fuss. Seeing the ashes, people will think she's just burned to death. So she walks up to the guy with the torch and thinks rather to light the fire. Suddenly, someone calls the girl's name. The protagonist doesn't realize who it could be. But when she turns around, she sees an attractive guy. Circinia wonders why so suddenly, and the brunette claims he will set her free. The girl is confused and tells him to wait. But the young man only takes her hand and kisses it. This strange man seems so familiar to her, so the red-haired lady just can't push him away. She is very familiar with that smell, so suddenly a realization comes to her. It just can't be, but they are nothing alike at all. The main character says the name Ben. The brunette claims he missed her. The girl is rescued before she knows it. After all this, she sits in the casino. The employee asks if she wants to call it a day. But the protagonist only says the word 16, then holds out all her chips. The crowd behind her erupts in cheers of admiration. One girl cries out that it's great, but the guy tells her to be quiet, because they need to find out how the lady with the red hair managed to win 2 games in a row. They wonder if the girl with so many chips feels rich. The protagonist thinks that everything belongs to her, but realizes that it's time to stop with it. Now she knows why people are so addicted to gambling, because she is already completely crazy, because she even won 2 games in a row. So the girl prays that the number she had wished for would fall out, and she gets lucky again. The crowd can't contain their admiration, and Circinia jumps up from her chair with indescribable joy. She thinks she has won, and this is her life. The girl looks at her winnings and wonders how much it is all worth. The lady with the red hair can't hold back a smile, for and finally managed to get rid of the life of a wicked witch. She has rid herself of her former goals and glorified the name of Circinia. She recalls that at 10 o'clock she was reading a book in her world and suddenly fell asleep. And she woke up as a character from that very book. The protagonist never thought this would happen. The evil Circinia has fiery red hair and was considered a beautiful girl. But despite her amazing beauty, she also possesses incredibly terrifying fire powers. Cold-blooded, she is not afraid of fire and is the epitome of evil. But no one saw her backside, because the girl spent her whole life alone and was a villain, which everyone wishes only the worst. The main character could not accept this while reading the book, and when she was reborn, she thought that a sad end had come. The girl almost lost her mind. But it's been 4 years since the beginning of the story, and Circinia's magic is told in the middle of the book. Until then, no one will know that she is a witch. The protagonist wonders if these sudden changes are God's will. The girl decided to live in herself with carelessly received money. If she were rich, she could have avoided the original ending and lived a good life, so the protagonist thinks that everything will definitely be fine now. But when she comes to exchange the money for chips, the employee states that he is sorry, but they are short of money right now. But the count will appear soon, and the young lady can ask him. But the protagonist only vehemently says that it would be better for the guy to exchange it all for money. She realizes that she needs to keep herself in control, but the girl spent all her money here. The employee claims that the money will be in a couple of days, but Circinia is not satisfied with such a thing, and even the chip cracks in her hands. The guy is frightened and says he will only have to wait a week, but the lady with the red hair just cracks the table. She argues that if the employee doesn't want to suffer the same fate, he should bring the money immediately. The same one cries out asking him to understand, for it will take time to hand over the money, but the lady with the red hair thinks it's all bullshit. She can't take the chips, so she wonders how she can get back the money she spent, and if the young man wants to make her pay damages. She wouldn't be able to say this in front of others for fear of a reaction, but there's such an aura coming off of her now. Butana is about to finish someone off. The guy claims in horror that he can give a guarantee. Circinia then asks what the guarantee is. The employee opens the door and invites the lady in, but there's only a skinny kid sitting there. The employee claims he's a slave the count brought in recently. The protagonist is furious and asks if he's joking and wants to give Rebank as collateral. The swimsuit cries out that this is the slave's lot and asks him to believe it, for the count has bought him back very dearly. The lady with the red hair can no longer hold herself together. She asks what he has just said. For recently he claimed that the count had no money, and here he is buying himself a slave, and asks if he thinks she would agree. The slave bows and asks her to forgive him. The young lady is boiling inside. Her head is hot, and she is already thinking how not to set everything on fire, but she needs to calm down. The worker sees the rage on her face and asks her to remain calm, because if the girl accepts this as a guarantee, the count will definitely repay her. The boy is already scared too. He is shaking and asking for help. The protagonist sighs and realizes that she needs to think rationally, because if she gets angry, she won't see any money and people will get hurt. She looks at the boy and sees that he is so gaunt. She doesn't even know how many days he hasn't eaten anything, so the red-haired lady just can't leave him there. The young man sees the woman coming towards him and startled. He covers himself with his hand, preparing to strike. But the protagonist only uncuffs him and offers to look at her freed hands. The guy did not expect this, but he is very happy, and when the protagonist extends her hand to him, he does the same in return. The girl claims that she will take the young man as collateral, and the employee must tell the count that if he does not pay the money within a week, she will burn this casino. When the girl returns home, she is a little disappointed because she wanted to repair the house with the money she received, but the plans changed and she brought her child as collateral. She sees that the young man has scars all over his body and needs help. Circinia tells him she will treat his wounds, but the boy claims he is fine. Then the lady with the red hair starts counting to 3, and the brunette runs up to her. The protagonist starts to rewrap his wounds and thinks they should go away soon. A guy asks what the name of the lady with red hair is. The girl claims her name is Circinia and asks what the young man's name is. But the one, after a moment of silence, claims he doesn't have a name. The protagonist realizes that there was no point in asking this and wonders how old he is. The brunette claims that he is 19. Then the lady with red hair gets shocked because the boy looks like a schoolboy, and it can't be that he is only a year younger than her. But she realizes that it may be because of his thinness, and then asks if the boy is hungry. He says that everything is fine, but after his belly treacherously rumbles and the young man all red says that he may be a little hungry. The protagonist smiles at this and walks over to the stove. She claims that if the young man doesn't eat the soup today, it will spoil. As she stands by the stove, she realizes that this is the first time she'll be using magic in front of someone. But the guy is just collateral, so she probably won't blab. But when the girl uses fire, he asks admiringly if she is a witch. Circinia claims to be the only one who can control fire, so he must not blab. Afterward, the boy promises he won't tell anyone. He looks a little downcast and asks if Circinia gets lonely, but the girl claims she's used to it by now. It's only been 10 days yet, but the red-haired lady is really living like a hermit. The brunette claims that Lady Circinia is strong, but the protagonist asks to just call her Circinia. The kid will be gone in a week, so she'd better not get attached, but she's thinking about giving him a name at first. The girl turns to him and states that she has been thinking about a name, then asks how he feels about the name Ben. But she thinks the guy didn't like it. The same guy claims it's not like that and he likes the name Ben. Then the lady with the red hair claims that she will call him that. The boy agrees and thanks Circinia. In this empire, the construction of gambling houses is allowed. The Count lost the palace in the casino, so it took him a lot of time and money to get the recognition of the emperor. In order to gain support, the Count gave most of the money to the nobles and eventually sank into debt. A year later, he was able to buy the palace, and now the Count is paying off debts from the money that brings casinos. People are always looking to win the jackpot. They like to spend money. But the likelihood of hitting the jackpot is low. In fact, it's all contrived so that the Count will benefit. The protagonist, of course, tried to enjoy a rich life. But this girl is incredible. She hit the jackpot 3 times in a row, and because of her, the Count's dream faded. Because if he gives her the money, he will remain bankrupt. When Circinia came to collect her share, the Count just used Louis as a shield. But now he is yelling at his servant. He orders him to wake up and get up now. The boy can barely stand up. He tells the Count that this chaos is all the work of that woman. But the man comes even more furious and cries out whether his servant wants to say that he couldn't tame one woman. Louis claims that this is not the case, but the woman is insane, for she broke the table with one hand and used strange powers. The Count doesn't understand what the boy is talking about. And the man adds that the woman's hair was suddenly lifted by a gust of wind, and that gust was also blazing hot. He himself almost burned in the whole thing. The Count realizes that the boy, though a fool, would not make such a thing up, whereupon he looks at the room where the boy was supposed to be and asks what is the matter with the slave. The employee doesn't even know how to say it and claims that it was given as a guarantee, because otherwise that woman would have trashed the place. The Count furiously asks if Louis knows who the kid was. The servant apologizes and says it was his fault. The man's finances are limited, especially compared to Entiu, the richest man in the empire. He borrowed from him to cover his losses. Fortunately, the Count likes to see handsome men around, so he bought this slave. He swings a stick at Louis and yells that he's a useless asshole and needs to find the woman faster and get the slave back. The Count was going to see him in a week. With money, he can't pay the woman now and him a slave without additional conditions, because it's the only way out. At this time, Circinia wanted to get to know Ben better. For one thing, he is somewhat dishonest. When the girl offered him more food because she thought he was hungry, he refused or just kept silent. So the lady with the red hair tells him that if he doesn't eat it, the food will spoil and be thrown away, but she doesn't care if he eats it or not. Then the boy thanks the lady with the red hair and eats the soup. He's used to slavery, to not being able to ask for anything. The boy apologizes for having eaten a lot already, and the protagonist claims that if he didn't eat everything, she'll have to throw away the leftovers. So the girl hands him another plate and tells him to eat more. Then the guy agrees to another portion. It was already the 3rd day, by which time the guy had already broken about 5 plates. He changes for one more broken plate, but the protagonist is not angry. The guy approaches the lady with red hair and offers his help. Circinia realizes that Ben is bored with nothing to do. In a place where Ben didn't even have a name, it was taught that if you didn't work, there would be no food for days, and it seems he was used to starving. Suddenly, the guy gets separated to his broom. The protagonist immediately asks if he's okay, and he apologizes again. The girl asks why he apologizes since he hurt himself and takes the broom away from him. But the young man apologizes again, whereupon Circinia bids him sit down. The same with puppy eyes obeys the lady with the red hair. After the main character treats his wound, the guy, looking at her beautiful face, thinks that Circinia really is a beautiful girl. Maybe that's why he is always nervous and makes mistakes, because the guy just wants to look good in her eyes. The protagonist claims to be finished, and the young man thinks how warm he is around her. He feels that the lady with red hair is his light. The boy thanks Circinia, and she suggests he be careful next time, in case she notices and that something is wrong. Afterwards, the girl realizes that Ben has grown up. The guy is a little embarrassed and says that his elbows and knees hurt every night. The main character is shocked because he has grown so much in just 3 days and realizes that guys grow up very fast. The young man seems to have eaten well and must have grown due to a proper diet. The main character is happy to see the boy growing and intends to feed him more in the future. Ben and also smiles back and tells Circinia that today they will bake bread. After all this, they go to bed. The main character hears some strange sounds like pleading. She gets out of bed and sees it's Ben. The guy has nightmares every night. He's shaking and his hands are cold. So now the lady with the red hair is now warming him with fire powers. Hey, the young man is feeling better for it. Circinia claims that all is well. Without here, he is safe. She tried to wake him up, but he wouldn't open his eyes. He seemed to be falling into an abyss, shivering and crying. So the girl can only warm him and restore his breathing, and hope that he will sleep. The main character asks why Ben is having such a hard time. Maybe the past is to blame for everything, and probably because of it, the guy suffers so much every night. This pain is something that ordinary people will never understand. The girl ponders whether she can bring him back in this condition, because if the young man returns, his life will be filled with misery again. But she needs this money to avoid his bad end. Circinia sighs and decides she will take care of Ben while they are together. She covers him with a blanket, but notices that the guy's face looks a little worried and wonders what's wrong. She ponders if he's having nightmares again, and if it could be because of the sweat on his forehead. She pokes the boy in the forehead and states that tomorrow she will cut his hair. The young man opens his eyes at this time and calls Circinia by name. The girl realizes that she has woken him up. The boy only looks at the lady with red hair with a smile, and she wonders why she feels so strange, like she's been accused of something. She tells the boy that he can go back to sleep because she just wanted to fix his hair. The young man states that he feels good because Circinia's hands are always warm. He also thanks the lady with the red hair for taking care of him, because thanks to that, he is not afraid to fall asleep at night. The protagonist is embarrassed. She asks if Ben saw the whole thing. The young man apologizes. He pretended to be asleep so as not to frighten Circinia. The brunette also thanks the girl for her concern, and the lady with the red hair only strokes his head. She tells the guy to sleep tight with a smile on her face, after which she retires to her bed. The young man also wishes her good night, but now he's all red from the young lady's touch. The next day, the protagonist decides to get a haircut. She asks Ben not to worry because she is only going to trim the ends. She also asks Ben if he doesn't want to get a haircut or if he's afraid. But the young man claims that everything is fine. Then the protagonist asks if he can stop shaking his legs because it's best not to mess around with scissors. She wonders if it could all be because of a restless sleep or because she woke him up. Ben, meanwhile, is trying to calm his legs and tells Circinia not to worry. Whereupon the lady with red hair approaches him. She takes a strand of hair in her hand and asks if she can cut it to that length. After a few minutes, the girl finishes and tells Ben it's done, but he sits there all red-faced and doesn't say anything back. Then the main character puts her hand on his forehead because it seems to her that the guy has a fever and needs to rest today. But the man jumps up from his seat and starts running around to calm down. Circinia grabs his hand and asks if he's sure he's okay, but the guy cries out that he's not. Then the protagonist tells him to stand and asks what's wrong with him, because if he runs a fever, it will only get worse. The boy is confused and claims that his heart is just about to jump out of his chest. The lady with the red hair doesn't know what he's talking about and asks if he's having a heart attack. She also suggests he visit a hospital. The guy, on the other hand, tries to calm down and says he shouldn't because he's feeling better. The protagonist doesn't really believe him and asks if it's true. The boy claims it is, after which he runs and sits down on a chair. He asks Circinia to trim some more. When Circinia finishes, she thinks what a charming fellow. She offers him a look in the mirror and asks him what he thinks. The guy, on the other hand, smiles genuinely, and the lady with the red hair asks Ben to speak only honestly and asks again how he is doing and if he should trim more. But the guy still maintains with the same smile that he doesn't have to and says he wants the warmth from Circinia's hands to always stay on his hair. The protagonist did not expect this, and her heart is pounding terribly now, as if she is going crazy. The girl wonders if she's having a seizure. Then he runs into the house and asks if the young man is ready to eat. Ben offers to help with the cooking. At this time, the knight apologizes to his master and states that they are doing the best they can. But in response, he hears only indignation, for the man said it was urgent. The servant says they will find him soon. His master only gets angry and calls the knight a fool. He can't say anything back. The man continues and says that this curse will last 2 years. They must bring back his son, and not necessarily alive. He also asks if Archine understands him, but the knight agrees with his master. At this time, Ben and Circinia are quietly eating their lunch. The food on their table is modest, but the two are still smiling sincerely. The protagonist sighs and the guy says the food is out. Circinia gets a little upset because after all, everything will end if she gets the money. But suddenly she realizes it's just the opposite, because if she does get the money, she won't be able to keep Ben. The young man, however, looks at her grim face and asks if something is wrong. The girl realizes that if he finds out, he'll start blaming himself, so she says she hasn't eaten meat in a long time and should have gone to the market. Ben says he'll go with her, but the protagonist refuses and says he'll stay home. The boy with the puppy dog eyes says he wants to help carry the shopping, but after one more rejection, Circinia shrinks a bit. The protagonist just can't resist such eyes, but she still has no money, and she doesn't want the guy to see her selling her jewelry out of desperation. Circinia loves to dress up for any occasion. She has never spared money on clothes, cosmetics, and jewelry. Now the protagonist thinks that Circinia spent a fortune that her parents left her, and all for a reason. The lady with red hair thinks that she is lucky, because without it she wouldn't have survived. The brunette says it's dangerous to walk alone, and the girl replies that she's more afraid to leave him home alone. She tells him to be a nice guy and try not to beat the plates, and states that she will be back soon. The boy speaks well, after which the protagonist sets off on her journey, but the guy stops her. He waves and says he will wait for Circinia. The lady with the red hair thinks how nice it is to hear that someone is waiting for her at home. The master examines the ring the protagonist gave him. He assesses its value. The young lady wonders if she can get at least 200,000 for that bling. Circinia has loved jewelry since she was a child, so she has good taste. She took great care of her things, so her jewelry retained its value. Now the girl asks how much the man is willing to give for it. Well, the man claims that the ring has a scratch, so he cannot offer a large amount. The lady with the red hair remembers that there was no damage on him at home and asks how there could be a scratch. But the guy holds out the ring to her and offers to take a look with his eyes. The protagonist realizes that this is a deliberate scratch because such a trace cannot be left by accident. She thinks where on it can come from such a scratch, and the owner of the shop offers 100,000 for it. Then the lady with the red hair grabs his arm and uses her powers. The man shrieks for her to let him in, then screams that he's hot. He doesn't even notice the iron plate flying out of his clothes. The protagonist picks it up and asks what it is. The shopkeeper holds up his hand and asks what it's about, because it's about removing the wrapper. The lady, however, sees the ring on the counter. She decides to pick it up, then makes a scratch and asks if it looks like the scratch on her ring. The man shrieks at what she is doing, but the protagonist only calmly asks if he wanted to make some money. The guy claims he won't give more than 103,000 for that ring, which makes the lady with the red hair furious. She slaps her hand on the table and claims that there is at least 500,000. The shopkeeper is shocked by such an amount and asks if the girl is crazy. The same claps him on the back and asks if he wants to, because if so, he will see what happens next, because despite her appearance, she is not so simple. Then the man asks for understanding and asks what about the 200,000. The lady with the red hair says she'll only give it up for 500,000 and no less. The salesman is already desperate. He says 3, but then corrects it to 4,000. But the protagonist does not agree. She says a solid 500,000 shillings. Then the merchant gives in and almost cries from the lost money. Circinia, on the other hand, steps in with the money she just earned. She thinks she should have done business wisely, and he should have given that money right away. After that, the girl goes to the market and buys all the necessary products there. The girl goes home quietly. She thinks she bought more than she intended, and if she had known this would happen, she would have taken Ben, and next time they could go together. But she wonders if there will be a next time, because the young man is leaving her in a couple of days. Circinia wonders if they can stay together a little longer. She even thinks that fate has brought them together. But after such thoughts, she decides not to get worked up, because she just needs money. Suddenly she hears someone asking if a lady has seen a red-haired girl. It's Louis, and he tells the stranger that the girl is walking with a young man of not very tall stature and shows her what kind. But the woman claims she didn't see it. The protagonist watches all of this from around the corner. She realizes that Circinia is the only girl in the empire with red hair. The young lady remembers that it was he who did not exchange the money to her then and wonders why he looks at her like that. But it seems to her that this search is not for good, because maybe he wants to plunge her into eternal sleep, so she needs to get rid of him first. Suddenly, she remembers that Ben is home all alone, and if they find Ben, he will be in danger, so the protagonist turns around and runs with all her legs home. When Circinia left the house, the boy tried to calm down. He had had a strange feeling in his chest for quite some time now when Circinia touched him, whose heart started to pound frantically. He thinks that if he wants to stay, he will be a burden to the lady with the red hair. Despite his background, he has received warmth and care. That will be enough for him. He recalls the young lady's face. The girl seems cold and inaccessible, but she is very affectionate. The brunette looks at his bandaged finger and smiles. He realizes that this is the first time he's been called by name. He kisses the bandages on his finger and thinks it's nice to know that the one who gave him the name and first called him was Circinia. He recalls the moments spent with her and thinks of those tantalizing lips and caring speeches, but suddenly realizes that his thoughts have gone somewhere else and wonders what he's all about. The guy is all red, thinking that he has already gone completely crazy because the girl helped him so much, and he allows himself such thoughts. After that, he decides that he needs some air, so he takes up laundry. Now he is doing laundry and putting things in order. It would be great if he could also learn to cook. Then he could make Circinia happy with a warm meal. Suddenly, he hears a familiar voice and realizes that Circinia has arrived. The young man smiles and says her name. But the protagonist just runs up to him and asks if the guy is okay. He says he's fine and asks what's wrong. Well, all she hears back is another question about whether someone came by. The brunette claims no one was there, after which the young lady sighs, not saying what a relief it is. Ben asks if something happened. Circinia says it's nothing, and she was just scared that the guy would break plates again. She then asks what the young man is doing. The same slightly flushed man claims to have been waiting for Circinia and doing laundry. The lady with the red hair strokes his head and claims that he's a good boy, and the guy just wonders if she can feel his heartbeat. Afterward, Ben says he'll take all the shopping into the house. He wonders if they could get even closer, but interrupts his musings and convinces himself that this worthless desire will definitely fade with time. Louis turns to his master and apologizes, but he only says that it was expected, and now 30 million shillings must be prepared. Blondie asks what the money is for. In response, he hears that in 3 days, the woman will bring a servant, and they need to prepare the money. The servant asks if the master is ready to pay her. And the guy argues that they can't just leave it as it is. They still have to give the money back before the bail is returned. First, he tells his servant to determine where the red-haired lady lives and get their bail. The boy asks what then. His lord replies that they'll just finish her off and give all the money back. Louis is a little shocked, but he can't refuse his lord, so he says he will do as his lordship ordered. At this time, the protagonist is quietly eating a meal with Ben. The guy offers the lady with red hair to eat, but she says that he had better eat himself. The young man claims he's happy just to watch Circinia enjoy the delicious food. The young lady, in shock, doesn't understand what happened to him, as he acts like a lovesick teenager. She looks at the guy, and he offers in his companion to eat rather before it gets cold. The protagonist is embarrassed herself, so much so that she even stinks up her fork on the floor. The guy asks if Circinia is okay and runs to the other fork. The young lady thanks him, and she's all red in the face, wondering what that was about and why it's happening to her. She can't believe she's embarrassed by this because her type of guy is handsome, muscular guys. As attractive as his face is, his thinness makes him look sickly, but he is so beautiful that the protagonist wants to see him cry. The guy pulls her out of her thoughts by bringing her a new fork, and the young lady thinks she's completely out of her mind. She lifts herself up from the table and claims to go, but that sudden movement makes the guy's hand touch her body. His face gets flushed, and he immediately apologizes and claims it was an accident. Circinia asks him in her mind not to react like that. She thinks it was terribly strange, and there's no need to let it go to her head. The red-haired lady leaves and says he can finish all the meat. She realizes it's time for Ben to go anyway. But when night comes, the protagonist can't sleep because she definitely has such thoughts in her head. She rolls around on the bed wondering if it was really that stupid. The girl looks at Ben's face and thinks that it's just a long-term attachment after all, and it leads to love. So that's why she's in over her head like this. At home, he's like a little brother to her, and she even feels sorry for him. But Circinia needs to leave the pity, because if the story starts, she may not willingly become the heroine of the plot. It will be bad for her. In 3 days, she will just trade it for money, and she can get rid of the image of the villain. The closer the day of their parting was, the harder the protagonist's heart was beating. But no matter what they experience, if she can show resilience, so it won't be so hard to leave. She looks at the guy and realizes she should start to distance herself, because if the guy goes back to the casino, who will be enslaved again? She wishes she could help him somehow, but she probably can't. The lady with the red hair hands him a plate and asks where his family is, and the young man replies that his mother died when he was 13. That's when he was enslaved. Circinia feels a little sorry for him, and the brunette says that he has already forgotten that desperate cry of his mother, for it has been many years. The young man is all alone, so no one calls him, but the first to call him by name after his mother fell into eternal sleep was Circinia. His eyes are already wet, and the girl's only thought is not, because she can't stay with him. If the plot goes against her, the boy will be killed, even if it's not his fault. And since she's in this body, she'll have to be left alone and a line has to be drawn. The young man says he'll wash the dishes himself, but the protagonist only coldly tells him that it's her stuff and she'll do it herself. Then Ben just looks away and agrees. The time passed quickly and the day came to say goodbye to the guy. The boy is already standing in the doorway and claims to be ready. The protagonist thinks that he must have realized that she can't leave him, but he smiles as if everything is perfectly fine. The protagonist's heart feels like it's being pierced by 1,000 arrows. Ben says the sun has set and he has to go. Afterward, they leave the house and the guy holds the lady with red hair by the hand on the way out. The casino owner is nervous, wondering if this woman will change her mind. The count even sent him a letter. He realizes it's a good opportunity, but he doesn't understand what he's waiting for, that slave or something more. He wants to please the count and bring great wealth. The man can't wait any longer and jumps up from his seat. He asks poor Louis why the lady with the red hair hasn't shown up yet. But suddenly he hears footsteps from the hallway and realizes they are coming. He can't contain his smile. The guys enter the room and the casino owner asks if they need the money, because if so, they are late. He needs to double-check, so the man offers to take off his raincoat. The protagonist does, and the man is even a little embarrassed because he did not expect the girl to be so beautiful. He realizes that he is too bold and asks to hand over the bail. He looks at the boy and notices that he has gained, pumped up, and changed his hair. The boy seems pleased. The main character wonders if everything is going according to plan. After all, Ben is just collateral for them. She even ponders if it's better for him to stay with her. The brunette only addresses the lady with red hair by her first name. The casino owner notices this. He states with a smile on his face that excellent conditions await the young man because the count promised to take care of this child. The protagonist realizes that there is no need to worry because the boy will be happy there. She asks when Ben will go to the count. The casino owner is shocked as the girl even gave him a name and claims it will be tomorrow morning. Circinia thinks that doing for the count is really much better than what it used to be. Louis holds out a suitcase of money to her and offers to see if there is 30 million in it, whereupon the man orders her to take the slave away. The red-haired lady releases his hand and meets his gaze one last time, after which the man claims she can collect her check. The protagonist is a little downcast, but she angrily turns to the casino owner and asks if he followed her. The man asks what it's about, and the young lady asks if he thinks she doesn't know about the men sent for her, to which the casino owner replies that he's just trying to make a successful transaction. Circinia claims she'll get away with it this time, but if it happens again, she won't just let it go. The count laughs nervously and claims to have understood, and after Togo turns to Louis. The guy holds up a document, and the protagonist signs there. She looks at her hand and realizes that Ben's hands are getting colder now, as if no one was holding them. But she decides that the deed is done and be it done, so she turns around and leaves with her suitcase. A little while later, the casino owner watches his servants beating the young man. He tells them to stop and asks the guy what powers the lady with the red hair has. But Ben only glares at him furiously. The man asks how this pathetic slave dares to roll his eyes if he doesn't tell him who he'll have to see for himself. He pulls a handkerchief from his jacket and says he's only getting his shoes dirty for nothing. He throws the handkerchief at the brunette and tells him not to touch his face, because it's the only thing he has. He also asks to whom he is trying to prove his loyalty, for this woman has exchanged him for money. Ben cries out for them not to touch Circinia, but the man only states that with his hands tied, the guy won't do anything anyway and asks who she is to him. The casino owner smirks and admits that still the red-skinned lady with the red hair has her charm, and he'll have to find out for himself. Then a servant comes in and tells them they've found the girl. Ben cries out for them not to touch her, but the casino owner only beats him one more time and offers him a look at himself. He didn't want to spoil the young man's face so badly, but he hopes the Count will understand. After that, he orders to take it to the airport to the slums. The guy gets locked up alone, and he thinks that's how it would be with Circinia. He asks her in his thoughts to be careful. At this time, the protagonist cannot sleep. She thinks that now she will just go crazy. The girl realizes that there is no need to stand still, because if she starts moving, the thoughts will go away on their own. She looks at the cauldron and remembers the first time she used magic in front of the boy. But the girl is trying to come to her senses, for she is already starting to have auditory hallucinations. But there's no way the guy can get out of her thoughts. She remembers him saying that Circinia was the first to name and call him. She decides to get Ben back after all. Even if she's put into eternal sleep or pierced with arrows, she has to get him back. She wonders if Ben would be happy with the Count. The girl decides to return all the money, because the most important thing is that everyone is alive. But someone opening the door interrupts her. It's the casino owner. He asks if it's not worth welcoming the guests with cordiality. The lady with the red hair asks what's wrong, but all she hears in response is how reckless it is. She wonders if the Count is plotting something against her and asks where they are going, but the man only asks if the young lady is going after a slave. Then Circinia asks where he is, and the casino owner only says that if she wants to know, she should treat the guests accordingly. The guy asks what the lady with the red hair cares so much about this pathetic slave and adds that it's rightly said that people look for their likenesses. The main character looks at him with a fierce look and offers to repeat what he said. She uses her magic. And the casino owner now realizes that this is the strange ability Lewis was talking about. He claims that there is no other way out, and they will have to plunge the girl into eternal sleep. But Circinia is not so easily defeated. She unconscious all the nights and approaches the man. He shrieks that the girl cannot touch him, for only he knows where the slave is. The protagonist is furious, and Circinia's soul whispers in her ear that it would be better to deprive this man of his tongue and squeeze his throat so that he cannot utter a word. The girl tries to keep her sanity, for she must not repeat Circinia's mistakes. But the casino owner only adds fuel to the fire. He says that the girl seems to have finally calmed down. He claims that she really likes this slave. He also says the guy was beaten up, and all he could think about was the lady with the red hair. The man asks if she wants to look him in the eye one more time. Then the protagonist can no longer control herself, and at the same minute a bright flame erupts. The casino owner is startled by this, but he doesn't even have time to say anything else before the house explodes. Lewis, standing in the courtyard in utter horror. Now he realizes that fire is the power of this lady. The guy thinks it's unbelievable. At this time, a man shrouded in fire screams for help. He says he does not want to sink into eternal sleep and begs for mercy. He begs Circinia to help him, but she only smirks at him. Suddenly, the protagonist regains her composure and realizes that she is the remnant of the real Circinia, who was a true witch. So she doesn't feel an ounce of guilt even if she hurts someone. Circinia is horribly violent. Popped into her body, the girl realized that Circinia gets out of control at the slightest irritation. The lady with the red hair is trying to calm herself down so she doesn't give in to her instincts, because she doesn't want to face a tragic doom. She looks at the bodies around her. She runs up to the casino owner and checks to see if he's alive. She realizes that it's her own fault. But if she had let him fall into eternal sleep, she would have just followed in Circinia's footsteps. So she drags the man behind her. Lewis is shocked. He cries out what to do, for he thought his master was no longer alive. He looks at one of the bodies and asks if it's the Count. The lady with the red hair claims there are burns all over his body, but he's still breathing, and his master took it all on himself. The girl says that the servant will not accuse her if he is in his right mind. She tells him not to even think about pursuing her. But the guy stops her after Circinia turns around. He says a little scared that the slave is on the Cedri River pier. The lady with the red hair asks what they're up to, but Lewis just holds out a suitcase and papers to her. The protagonist realizes it's Ben's papers and the money in the bag, so she asks what he wants. But the servant claims he is up to nothing, for the money originally belonged to the lady with the red hair. He says he will take care of the count, and she must run away before it is too late. The protagonist looks at him incomprehensibly, and Lewis only wishes her God's blessing, after which the girl leaves him. The young lady runs with all her legs. Hey, need to tell Ben that she is sorry and very ashamed for her own stupidity. Circinia really wants to be near him. She doesn't know since when, but now she can't be without him. Ben is bound and heading for the ship. The man dragging him claims that the slaves had to work hard that night. He pulls the rope, and the young man falls off his feet. The boy realizes that everyone treats him the same, and only Circinia took him for a human being. She was the only one who helped him realize what real care is, so the guy misses her terribly and wants to know if she's okay, but he can't right now. The man holding the rope shouts at him not to waste his time and to get up. The boy struggles to get up, but the man only calls him a piece of trash. AI, his coworker, claims that since they're taking their time, he'll go for a smoke break. The brunette lies on the floor. He clenches his fist and realizes he can no longer feel Circinia's warmth. Little by little, the rain begins to drip, and the boy wishes that that downpour would wash away everything in the world, leaving only Circinia's hut. Like this lying in the downpour, he only wants the lady with the red hair to be happy. Suddenly, he hears someone calling his name, and the young man realizes that it is Circinia. The protagonist only runs to him with all her might. She runs up and says she will set him free, but it will be a little hot. The guy almost cries. He thinks this can't be happening, and could he have gotten so desperate that he started seeing hallucinations? The young lady removes his rope with fire magic and asks if Ben is okay, but the boy realizes that it's not an illusion and turns to Circinia. He asks if she is all right, because the count said he would find her. The protagonist, on the other hand, looks at his bruises. She thinks that he is so badly hurt and his whole body is covered with abrasions. But he is not offended that she left him. The guy cares so much for her. So looking at the brunette's face, she says that she is fine, but he must have had a hard time. But he only says with a smile that he's doing fine. The lady with the red hair apologizes and says she shouldn't have left Ben behind. But the brunette says he's happy to see her again, and Circinia has nothing to apologize for. But the young lady argues that she should be alone because she doesn't know what will happen to her powers. She's also scared that she'll hurt Ben. The lady with the red hair claims that after the separation, she constantly thought of him, remembered his voice, his facial features, and could not forget the warmth of the young man. That's why she came back, because she wants to be close to him. The girl thinks that he probably won't like it, because she left him and now she wants to be together again. But the brunette only tells the one to look at him, and when the red-haired lady looks up, she sees that he says with a sincere smile on his face that he has been thinking about her all the time, and to be near Circinia is his only wish, because without her, his life is meaningless. After that, they burned Ben's slave papers and set out to find a place to sleep. The guys wanted to go to a place where no one knows them and start over. The protagonist decided to go as far away as possible, wherever the eyes were. They wandered aimlessly through the surrounding countryside, talking about worldly vanity, discussing warm and cold corners of the world, cozy and noisy places. And on the third day of their journey, they found a village where they decided to stop. It was the village of Moulin. It was formed by only 3 people from the foreman helped them find a small house. This cottage was a little further away from the village, but it was very quiet and cozy with Ben. Now the main character is walking through the market and thinks that Ben needs to buy some new clothes. She looks at the men working. She and Ben have been told that this settlement is known for woodwork, and the craftsmen there work very hard. Ben tells Circinia that her jaw is about to drop, and the one comes out of her thoughts and states that woodworking is very fascinating to watch. The young man only asks if the lady with red hair likes such bodies, and she looks at Ben and replies in her mind that she likes attractive guys. However, she decides to keep it a secret from him. The young man, however, looks at the counter and leads the jewelry there. He says that Circinia would really like it. Then the lady with the red hair also approaches the counter and claims it's pretty cute and would consider buying it. But the brunette stops her. Circinia asks why, since he said she'd be fine with it, but Ben says he's changed his mind and suggests they look elsewhere. In the evening of the same day, two guys are wandering through the woods. One of them claims that the guy has been there for a while. His co-worker notices that there was a rather large cabin in place of the charred sticks. One of the guys claims they didn't burn this house down and realizes they're too late, and in fact they need to get the guy lured back as soon as possible because there's not much time left. Suddenly, he finds a necklace on the floor and picks it up. The jewelry looks quite expensive, and there are other jewels lying near it. The knight is already wondering if the guy wasn't alone, because he would have escaped faster if he hadn't started picking up the valuables. If he was last in the bay, he is now quite far away. The man tells his colleague to hurry before he travels any farther, for His Excellency hopes for speedy results. He doesn't know who exactly, but if that someone gets in the way, he's going to regret it. The protagonist at this time sits quietly in her new house with a mug of tea. She dreams of living like this every day, but she thinks it's not worth it to get herself worked up. Ben runs up to her from behind, and the protagonist asks where he is going, because the guy has been absent all morning, and the one with a sincere smile on his face claims that he has found a job. The lady with the red hair doesn't understand why the guy wants to work and wonders if she's not bringing in enough money, but the man proudly claims that he is now a carpenter. When the girl hears this, she just grins and congratulates him. The boy is already imagining walking up to Circinia, stroking her hair and telling her to hide her beautiful smile, and approaching his lips to hers will tell her that otherwise he won't be able to hold on. But he realizes that he can't do that, and he can't ruin the moment because of attraction, so he needs to stop thinking about it. The young man tells Circinia to rest, and he will do the laundry. The protagonist states that it must be very difficult to work as a carpenter. Suddenly, she remembers an important thing. Yesterday, she looked at the accumulated clothes and thought that she would better wash them the next day, but there was her underwear. The girl realizes that she has to put it away before Ben sees it. But when she arrives at the laundry place, she sees that the guy is already washing her underwear. She shrieks at Ben to leave the laundry on her, and he claims that the lady with the red hair's hands are completely cold, and asks to let him do the laundry, but the protagonist cries out that it's her laundry. As the guy looks at his hand holding the scarlet panties, a realization finally comes to him. He cries out in apology and also asks Circinia not to misunderstand him, because he was just picking up clothes and didn't even notice that they were her underwear. The main character is shocked and asks him to stop and just leave the laundry there, and the young man says he will. After that, they go into the house, and the lady with the red hair heals Ben's wounds. She claims that all the abrasions are gone, and luckily it disappeared quickly. One of the reasons Circinia treats Ben is to be able to see his naked torso. The girl wonders if he reacted too emotionally to the plain underwear, but then ponders why she reacted that way, because now she has a terrible sense of shame. She decides not to think about it anymore. The guy turns around, and the lady with the red hair, not expecting this, asks what the scar on Ben's left shoulder is. The guy claims he doesn't know himself. This scar could have been left as a child. The brunette then turns to Circinia. He asks if they can sleep together tonight. The main character let it happen the day she met Ben, and they have been sleeping together ever since. The girl wonders if it's time to start sleeping separately and decides to turn him down. But going to bed, she realizes that she can't, because she feels so sorry for the guy. So the lady with red hair only wishes him good night. However, she hears Ben ask her to hold hands. The protagonist is taken aback, and the guy only says that her hands are so warm and it will be easier for him to fall asleep. The young lady blushed and agreed. She had often heard this request from him, but wondered whether to agree. Then the puppy-eyed brunette asks if that means refusal, and if Circinia is against it. The protagonist can't refuse. When she holds hands with him, she doesn't know if the forces are affecting it, while when their bodies exchange temperature, she feels fine. The girl can even feel Ben's heartbeat. She wonders if something is wrong. But when she looks at the young man's calm face, she realizes that nothing has happened. She lies back down and thinks it's good that the boy managed to fall asleep, and now she has nothing to worry about. But she doesn't understand why she's so sad. The girl sighs and realizes it's time for bed. However, as she falls asleep, the young man rises and touches her hair. He squeezes her hand tighter and kisses it, and after that embarrassment lays back, he asks Circinia in his mind to forgive him just once. At this time, one of the servants reports to the knight that they have found out about the location of the guy in the village of Moulin. Moulin is a village in the south, so it will take 2 days to travel by horseback. After receiving the Lord's order, the guy immediately started the search, which took a month, so there's nowhere else to postpone, but it's worth a try anyway. He claims that tomorrow they will go to Moulin, for the lad must appear before the great count. The young man's wife sleeps peacefully in bed, holding hands with Circinia. The next day, he smiles happily and holds out a plate of food to the girl. The protagonist realizes that Ben already cooked her breakfast a couple of days ago, and his culinary skills are getting better. The lady with the red hair thanks the brunette. Where she especially likes his potato cakes, the guy makes mashed potatoes and then bakes them and gets a pretty interesting flavor. And the realization that Ben tried only makes it tastier, so Circinia can't hold back a smile. She looks at the guy and realizes that he's changed somehow, so the young lady says he's a little burned out. The guy with a smile on his face claims he just worked hard, and the protagonist doesn't understand why the guy is happy about his face getting burned. Well, he smiles and thinks he's glad to see a smile on his face anyway. After breakfast, Ben leaves for work, and the protagonist says goodbye to him. When he leaves, a little embarrassed, she thinks about walking him to work every morning like they're a married couple, but realizes she doesn't need to deviate from the plan. She was so at ease now. The guy had done all the chores around the house. He was both cleaning and cooking, telling Circinia to rest. She remembers him talking happily about his first paycheck and thinks, so a gift would be too much, but she can cook something, or the guy cooks every day. She goes to the stove in a huff and says she hasn't used her powers in a while. The young man, on the other hand, is busy working at the time, and his coworker approaches him from behind and claims that today is the first paycheck, and then asks what Ben is going to do. The guy claims he wants to give a gift. The employee pokes the brunette and asks if the gift is for Ben's girlfriend. The young man is embarrassed and shrieks, "Which girl?" Then the coworker asks if they live together. The guy, however, says that no, and in his thoughts adds that they do not just live under the same roof, and the girl is his savior, light, warmth, and protection. But then he realizes that he himself wants to become her protector and thinks about how to describe their relationship with Circinia. One of the workers says that the two of them are not together yet, but they will be soon, while the young man says that it is not like that at all. He dares not even think about becoming her partner, but wonders what he wants from her. At the sight of the lady with red hair, he gets hot and wants to kiss her lips, hug her waist. Just thinking about it only makes the desire grow stronger, and there seems to be an immeasurable surge of feelings in his chest. His colleagues only laugh and say that if she is not his girlfriend, she is his wife. The guy, however, runs away in embarrassment and says he'll go to work next, but the guys just keep grinning. At the end of the day, the brunette is in a hurry because he wants to make it before the store closes. He is already imagining how happy Circinia will be with the gift and hoping she will like it. Suddenly, someone calls out to the guy. He turns around without suspecting anything, but what he sees shocks him. The main character at this time tastes the cooked soup and realizes that it is ready. The sun is already setting, and the red-haired lady thinks that Ben will be home soon. The girl thinks that today he is delayed by something and decides to wait, but it gets darker and darker outside until it is night. The young lady asks why he hasn't come back yet and wonders if something might have happened and whether she should go looking for him. But she doesn't even know where to go, so she decides to just wait. But the guy still doesn't show up. So the next morning, the young lady heads to the village. She asks about Ben and his coworker, but the latter claims that the guy went straight home after work. He said he needed to get home as soon as possible. Another villager responded to the protagonist's question by saying that she did not know and did not remember well, while another resident claimed not to have seen anyone. After interviewing many people, then giving up after all, Circinia headed home. When she gets to the house, she sits down at the table and is completely despondent. She looks at the soup she made yesterday and can't accept the fact that Ben has just disappeared. She is awakened from her sleep by a girl with ponytails. She asks why the lady with red hair is not sleeping on the bed. The main character, however, is lying under the door. She realizes that she has fallen asleep again, not in her room, and the girl asks if Circinia is okay, because she must be hungry. The lady with the red hair says it's okay and lies down on the bed. "Hey, I'm having that dream again." A dream in which she is desperately waiting for Ben, but he doesn't come. After this dream, the protagonist has a headache all day long. The girl sits down next to Circinia and asks if she has a headache, but the red-haired lady tells her not to worry and to just leave her alone. The little girl claims that Circinia says that all the time, but she won't go anywhere. Then the protagonist claims she said she'd give money, but the girl with ponytails does not even listen to her and claims that she will still be there, because who else will take care of the lady with red hair if not her? The protagonist only turns around and thinks what a stubborn little girl, because no matter how much she is told, she still does not listen. Circinia doesn't want anyone to be around, because you can never predict at what moment a loved one can leave you alone. She thinks May has grown up a lot since they first met. The first time they met was in the village. The little girl was all gaunt and claimed that she honestly didn't steal anything, but the man just yelled at her. He started kicking the little girl and yelling that she was a dirty rag. May tearfully continued to say she hadn't stolen anything, but at some point the hitting stopped. When the little girl looked up, she saw that her abuser was already out. She realized that the lady with the red hair had saved her. The protagonist held out her hand and asked her if she could stand up on her own. They met, and 2 years have passed since then, but Circinia cannot turn away from her because she is worried. The little girl is cleaning the house and claims that they say wooden furniture is being brought in from the village of Moulin today, and it's time for them to get a new table anyway, so she suggests they go look together. Suddenly, Circinia shouts to her to come out, and the girl immediately leaves the house. The protagonist, however, remembers that the village of Moulin is the place where she and Ben settled. She lived in that hut for a year. But the young man still has no information about her, so the girl thinks she's missing. She's been angry for months, but since she's leaving, she should have at least warned someone. But she couldn't say, so she made you all worry. She has left everything in the past. The girl tries to calm down and thinks that they were only together for a couple of days, so they shouldn't be so bitter because now Ben is probably happy. She left the village of Moulin without regrets, and she hasn't heard from her boyfriend in 3 years. The story of the book is about to begin. The young lady gets out of bed and thinks how tired she is, after which she decides to take a walk. She asks May if she has eaten, and the little girl offers to do it together. But the lady with the red hair claims she'll be gone for a while, so let the girl eat on her own. May asks where he is going, and Circinia says she will go for a walk, whereupon the little girl tells her to be careful. The girl likes the lady with the red hair. That day 2 years ago, she pulled her out of a darkness that had no end. Circinia may look distant, but she's very caring. The girl thinks that if she so truly wanted to drive her away, she would have done so already, but Circinia is very kind. The little girl doesn't know what's wrong with her, but the young lady is fading before her eyes. Sometimes when she looks out the window, her eyes wander like ashes in the wind. So the little girl decides to be by her side. Now she wants to make potato cakes, for she likes them very much, looking with red hair. The main character walks around the village. She finally feels alive again. She doesn't know if it's because of the news about Moulin Village, but she keeps thinking of Ben. So he thinks he should go to a noisy place because maybe then all the thoughts will be weathered out of his head. She also remembers that May has completely worn out that gray dress she bought her a long time ago. But the little girl claimed that even if the lady with the red hair bought something new, she still liked the very first dress that Circinia had bought her best. She has been wearing the same one for 2 years now, so the main character bought meat and a new dress for her. Suddenly, someone grabs the young lady by the arm. The man says they haven't seen each other for a long time and asks where the girl is going. The main character looks at him coldly and slaps his arm. She claims it's none of his business. The guy grabs his arm and Circinia realizes that the outcome is always the same, but Charles still won't back down. One day, a stranger broke into their house. Then the little girl woke up in the middle of the night from a strange noise. She saw a silhouette in the darkness and asked Circinia if it was Circinia. But she saw only a stranger there and screamed. He ran away as soon as he saw May awake. She did not see his face, but the protagonist is sure that this stranger was Charles. If it was a regular mugger, he wouldn't have gotten away so easily, but this idiot is obsessed with her. Laziness and red hair thinks how infuriating he is. She'd love to put him into an eternal sleep. The guy is furious, and the protagonist in his mind asks if he thinks he's lucky. But it's all thanks to May's intervention, because if it weren't for her, he'd be the one on the table. There must be a reason why it's not though, and roams the neighborhood so fearlessly, fearing nothing. Being the son of a petty officer, Charles has a certain power and acts like the whole world revolves around him. The thing is, his father is well acquainted with the Lord, which means he's connected to the aristocracy. Apparently, the guy thought there was a single woman in the house, so he showed up in the middle of the night. The main character turns around and tells the guy not to think she doesn't know who he is. The guy just smirks and says he was wondering why the girl stopped so suddenly. He walks up to her and asks her with a smirk if she has proof. The protagonist thinks what a fool he is. There is no proof, so he continues to provoke her. The lady with the red hair tells him to watch his mouth, because if he gets caught, she won't let him go. The guy's shaking with anger, calls her a mutt. He yells for her to stop. The guy doesn't understand what's wrong, because in this village no one dares to neglect him. Everyone is eager to please him and get his attention. He wonders why he's even groveling to get this girl. He thinks this worthless wench will break at the first hardship and there's no way he'll forgive her. The guy holds out his hand and yells that he told her to stop. Then the protagonist turns around and grabs him by the neck. The guy realizes he's already hanging in the air and tells that one to let go immediately. He wonders who she is, but he can't say anything because he's choking. Then the protagonist lets him go. She thinks the guy got the hint, and with a smile on his face claims that he pounced first, and she's just retaliating. After which the red-haired lady calls him a mediocrity and walks away. Many have seen Charles harass her before, and the fact that he is the son of a yeoman does not justify such actions. The guy can't believe it and asks what they're all staring at. Someone from the crowd comes up to him and helps him up. The young man wonders why this is so humiliating, but he will not let it go and thinks that Circinia will still beg him for forgiveness. Suddenly he hears words about a witch. The guy immediately turns around and the acquaintance continues to talk. He claims that the girl has long since escaped and she simply cannot be there. The guy walks up to him and grabs him by the shoulders. He's hoping to get some useful information, so he tells him to repeat himself. A stranger with a burn on half her face claims that this girl is a monster and a fire witch. Charles then claims he wants to know more about the burn. When Circinia returns home, the little girl is surprised and asks the alley lady with the red hair herself to carry the table. The main character, on the other hand, holds out a pink dress to her. May doesn't realize what it is at first, but when she unwraps it, she marvels at its beauty, wondering if it is meant for her. After that, the girl starts running around the room happily. The main character smiles and thinks that she liked it. The little girl says with a sincere smile that Circinia cares for her so much. The red-haired lady does not dislike May. On the contrary, she is very grateful to her. But right now, she just wants to live the story quietly. She's grown quite attached to the characters after all. The girl remembers Ben and realizes that she doesn't want to feel that kind of pain again, because once was enough for her. That same night, some knight wanders through the forest. He realizes that there is nothing in this backwater and you just have to go and go and go. He remembers that he has an appointment tomorrow and needs to get back as soon as possible. But suddenly he smells smoke and realizes that something is burning. When he approaches the fire, he sees that it is the stable where all the villagers' supplies are kept. On the ground near the burning stable is Charles's hairpin. The main character wakes up again, not in her room. She realizes that it happened again. When she doesn't open her eyes, all the time she finds herself not in the room. It could be the restroom, the kitchen, the front door, the living room. She used to wake up at least within the house, but now she wakes up in the yard. Circinia knows the name of this affliction when you walk around at night without realizing you're asleep. It's sleepwalking. Now she has to close the lock on the gate every time so she can't leave the house in her sleep. The young lady realizes she's cold. The next day, the babe made potato pies. She says the lady with the red hair slept all day after her bath and asks if she's okay. But the main character only says yes, and the babe asks if she knows there was a fire in the night. She says a fire broke out in the stable, and the whole crop burned. The little girl doesn't understand what the watchman was doing. Circinia thinks she has so much power to speak. May adds that they say the fire was caused by arson and asks if the culprit will be beaten if they find him. The protagonist, you'd think yes, because that stable had crops for the winter, and the culprit wouldn't get away with it. Suddenly, someone in the courtyard shouts that a witch lives in that house and shouts for her to come out immediately. The main character gets angry and jumps up from the table, but the girl grabs her hand and asks her not to go out. Believe hostile, and it's dangerous. But the lady with the red hair states that everything is fine and she needs to make sure of something, and the girl should not follow her and stay in the room. When she goes out into the street, she sees that there is already a herd of people with torches. They are shouting furiously, and that girl is a wicked witch, has descended all the stalks and is not afraid to show her face. Charles is at the head. He points to Circinia and says, "You shameless girl dared to burn the whole crop, so you must prepare to take your punishment." The young lady only calmly, crossing her arms over her chest, asks if they think she set the fire. But the guy says it was her and Charles will deal with her. The lady with the red hair sighs and asks what he's all about. But the latter only points to the night and says that talking is useless, for they have a witness. Golden is a little nervous. He says he saw the fire in the stable, but he says it a little hesitantly. So Charles tells the Tom to go ahead and tell everyone who set the fire. She whispers in his ear that this way he can prove himself to his girlfriend. Then the guy points to the main character and claims she's the one who set the fire because he saw her running away. Circinia only calmly asks if he says he saw her set the stable on fire, but Charles says there's no point in even trying to threaten Golden there anymore, since they already know everything, the same thing she did to the hut. When the protagonist starts to get a little nervous, he realizes that she panicked, and it is true. He cries out that the hut wasn't enough for her, so she's stolen their village too, and then he tells her to catch her. But May comes running out of the house with a broom and shrieks that Circinia was with her when the fire started and the guy is lying. But he only asks if she is an accomplice and orders to catch the two of them. The protagonist almost freaks out at this, but Charles argues that maybe magic will save her, but that girl won't. And if she gives in, he'll spare the little one, Circinia already ready to plunge that one into eternal sleep. And the little girl shouts for her to run away quickly, after which the protagonist surrenders and stretches out her hands. Charles rejoices because he's finally got her. After which the lady with the red hair ends up in jail. Charles enjoys this view. He says he will give her a chance if the girl kneels, and then he will tell her father that he forgives her. But the protagonist only says she heard the dog bark. That hurt the guy's pride. So the man cries out whether she has forgotten herself altogether, for if she does not plead on her knees, he will burn her. Circinia tells him to do so. But how unfortunate, because he can't even touch her. This makes Charles angry. He kicks the cage and cries out that the girl wants to say goodbye to her life. The main character thinks that she would really like to sink into eternal sleep. She ponders how long she will have to put up with the meaninglessness of life, because no matter how luxurious she lives, no matter how delicious food she eats, she still does not feel anything. The protagonist is terribly tired, because for 4 years she has been completely alone. Charles still can't calm down and keeps shouting insults. But the young lady does not even listen to him anymore. She thinks that everything is pointless, because you can just close your eyes and everything will be over, as it usually happens. A little while later, she's being led to the burning. One guy throws a rock at her but misses, so he yells that she can't get away with dark magic. Circinia looks at that pitiful pebble and thinks, what dark magic, and they should work on their marksmanship first, and then blame her for all their troubles because this is a real witch hunt. It is too hard for the girl. She would like to live where there is eternal peace, but it is as if she is destined to become a villain. Someone in the crowd shouts for them to let Circinia go. It's May. The lady with the red hair thinks it's amazing that the little girl is now worried about her, and it reminds someone. The girl remembers Ben and thinks how he is now, the day nothing helps to forget about him, and these memories will forever remain in her heart, because the guy worried about her even when he himself suffered. Circinia realizes that she is being hunted and will have to leave the village because her powers have been revealed. She wonders if she will be pursued if she escapes, and realizes that she will have to get a little burned. She wants to spread the fire and escape and take May with her. Charles is now holding her hand and telling everyone to watch that the witch is giving up. The guy asks if it's scary, because the crowd is eager to see her burn to the ground. It will be a terrifying sight. He leans over to Circinia and tells her that the end has crept up unnoticed, and to save herself, she need only ask for his help. But the protagonist only spits in his face, and Charles is finally enraged. The girl thinks that this is great, because everything goes according to plan, and when the fire is lit, it will be necessary to keep discretion. The lady with the red hair thinks that if she gets even a little bit mixed up, things could end up miserably. She's already preparing herself for further action. But suddenly someone shouts for the guy to be surrounded. The red-haired lady doesn't realize what's going on, and before she knows it, her hands are being freed by one of the knights. He apologizes and claims he will help her get free. The young lady thinks it might be the local guards. Charles has already been captured. He yells for them to let him go and asks if they know who he is. The girl rubs her hands where the ropes used to be, but suddenly someone calls her name. The main character sees a handsome man, but she can't understand who it is because it's the first time she sees him and doesn't understand how he knows her name. The young man, however, just takes her hand and kisses it. The protagonist does not understand what is wrong and why the guy does not let go of her hand. But suddenly, she sees very familiar features in him and she thinks the guy looks a lot like Ben. The young lady addresses him by name, and he claims with a blush that he missed Circinia. The protagonist doesn't realize if it's really him. The guy says that she is very thin. He clenches his fist. Afterward, he says he's sorry because he came so late. The red-haired lady hears the velvet voice of a real man and realizes that Ben has changed a lot. The protagonist wonders if it's really him because it all seems unreal to her. The guy sees the rope marks on the main character's hands and gets furious. He thinks how dare that guy touch the delicate wrist of the lady with red hair. The second he pulls his sword from its sheath and points it at Charles, Ben claims he will finish this pathetic man off. Circinia realizes that he drew his sword and wonders if he is going to plunge Charles into eternal sleep. She just can't believe that someone who was just recently a child is capable of such a thing.